The AMD Radeon RX 580 has been around for about 8 years now, and I think just about everything has been said that could ever be said. It's like a horror movie villain. You think you've finally put it down and can move on with your life, but along comes a crypto bubble or a machine learning boom, and up pops the good old RX 580, rising from the crypt like a yeasty Nosferatu. Well, I've had it. Enough is enough. I want this monkey fighting GPU off this Monday to Friday platform. This is the last time I will ever make a dedicated review of the RX 580 or even the 480. And I challenge my fellow content creators, you know who you are, I challenge all of you to never speak of this graphics card ever again. No sponsor for this video, but I have just enabled channel memberships. If you'd like to donate a couple of currency units a month to help keep the lights on and get some loyalty badges for your trouble, click the join button in the doobly-doo, or if you're not a joiner, you can give a one-off donation with the super thanks button. Cheers! Despite my gripes, there really is nothing wrong with the RX 580, especially the real version with 2304 shaders. Like many GCN-based graphics cards, it's weathered the test of time, with 8GB of VRAM that would put companies like Nvidia and modern-day AMD to shame. The problem with that longevity is, we know how good the card is. We don't need a billion videos every year about it. AMD has tried to put down the Polaris series by discontinuing driver development. Thankfully, AMD's open approach to driver development means third-party alternatives are available. R.ID drivers are still being developed, and they're easier to install than ever before, while retaining the kinds of granular control that certain people really want. Third-party drivers aren't to everyone's tastes. You might be concerned about security, or the potential to make a mistake and accidentally brick something, or maybe you're just too lazy to bother. I understand all of these viewpoints, especially the latter, but for the sake of the last ever RX 580 video, I'm treating my card to the latest R.ID drivers at the time of recording. The test platform is my moderately priced gaming PC, featuring a Ryzen 5 7500F and 32GB of DDR5 RAM. If you can't see a game that captures your interest here, may I recommend literally any budget PC gaming channel. To say farewell to YouTube's favourite GPU, I decided to start with YouTube's favourite game. GTA 5 Remastered has a lot of RT options that we won't be able to access on the 580, but that doesn't mean we can't play it. In fact, it plays pretty well at 1080p. The high preset, thank you for including presets by the way Rockstar, is far above the 60fps mark, averaging in the 80s and not dropping even in the grass and bushes on Jack's Hill. The very high preset is quite a step up in terms of graphics, especially the aforementioned vegetation, but that means the 60 plus frame rate experienced on the road collapses into the 40s when going off-road. While we're retreading very familiar territory, Cyberpunk 2077 sets the bar for the rest of the games I'll be testing today, delivering a playable 30 plus at medium settings with no upscaling. A more playable 60 average comes at low settings with quality FSR, though it does drop into the 50s in more demanding parts of the benchmark. Plus, it's worth reiterating that this game can get CPU limited pretty easily in actual gameplay, so don't expect to hit these numbers with a Skylake i5. Unfortunately, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a bit too much for the RX 580. Which is understandable, of course. It costs a lot to look this good, am I right? I had to drop settings to very low and FSR to performance to get a 30 plus experience. Yes, that 1% low is 29.9, but I'm in a forgiving mood. Kingdom Come 2 might be well optimised, but the RX 580 is well old, and 1080p high falls short of a constant 30fps target. 1080p medium does better, averaging almost 40 and not dropping below 30 in my test. If you're looking for 60 FPS, you might have to reduce quality beyond what I personally consider acceptable, but adding quality FSR to 1080 medium is pretty close to 60. The Last of Us Part 2 is surprisingly not that much more demanding than Kingdom Come, and at 1080p medium it's averaging in the mid-30s and stays above 30 for the whole test. At these settings there's no subsurface scattering, so the characters do look a little previous gen, but it can get worse. For example, at 1080p low with performance FSR, the average pass is 60, and lows only dip into the mid-50s, but Dina looks like she's seen some shit. As you might expect, Unreal Engine 5 games don't get on well with the 580, especially those which rely on Lumen. Black Myth Wukong is, in my opinion, unplayable here. 1080p medium drops below 30 FPS immediately, and while 1080p low could potentially lock at 30 FPS, it still suffers from flickering shadows at these settings. At the risk of sounding like a stuck record, Horizon Forbidden West is an acceptable mid-30s experience at 1080p medium. Like The Last of Us, getting to 60 plus is possible, but involves a massive drop in quality, requiring the low preset and performance FSR. Clair Obscur is another UE5 title that looks stunning on higher-end hardware and appalling on older, weaker stuff. Even at native 1080p, the low preset delivers more nasty grain than Mexico did to Iraq in 1971. You see, a shipment of grain that had been marked not for human consumption was accidentally sent from Mexico to Iraq. The test scene didn't manage to reach a 30 FPS average even at low settings, but applying a silo's worth of upscaling makes things arguably playable at the expense of just so much grain. Dragon Age Veilguard. What a surprise, 1080p medium, mid-30s. Hey, if you can tolerate 30 plus, maybe playing with a controller, this could all be pretty playable stuff. Hitting 60 once more requires dropping quality and increased amounts of FSR, which isn't all that bad, but it does make my character's arrows look like something out of The Predator. Going out on a high note, Ghost of Tsushima is a little less demanding than some of the titles featured so far, and can actually reach 40 FPS at 1080p medium. Moreover, it has a very low quality preset, which does murder your draw distance and LODs. It doesn't look awful, and plays very well at 69 FPS. Well, feels like forever since I last said that. Despite closing with a 69, it's not an entirely happy ending for the RX 580. Obviously, some games didn't even start. Indiana Jones and Doom the Dark Ages need RT hardware the Polaris card simply doesn't have. Spider-Man 2, curiously, didn't want to start at all, and even games that did work were slightly more prone to crashing. Ghost of Tsushima, for example, crashed to desktop every time I went into the graphics menu from inside the game. This is possibly a result of using the R.ID. drivers, but it might just be one of the weird quirks we come to expect when using an old graphics card in modern games. Meanwhile, some titles worked, but were just too much for the old $230 card. Alan Wake 2 can't get above the mid-teens at 1080p, but dropping the render resolution scarcely has an impact, and the thing's still running below 20 FPS with a lower resolution than Pac-Man. Like I said in the intro though, we already know how good the RX 580 can be. If you're content playing esports and previous generation games, this could be everything you need from a graphics card. Because who among us doesn't have a backlog of unplayed games longer than the mighty Euphrates? It's a callback to the Iraqi grain reference from earlier. Don't worry about it. Cards on the table. I was kind of joking with the title and the intro. I actually wrote them over a year ago at a time when I thought some of my colleagues on YouTube needed to move on and talk about something other than Polaris cards for once. I'm not actually going to besmirch anyone, especially smaller creators who want to talk about the RX 580. Besides, these days it feels like the GTX 1660 series have taken over their roles somewhat, so I guess I might need to make the last ever GTX 1660 Super review one day. In the meantime, if you're looking for something a little more modern while still very affordable in 2025, I'd suggest looking at the RX 5700 XT, a video about which is on screen now. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.